The iPhone won't plug and play. We step inside one of the places you can actually touch Facebook, and we find out if Venom really is the dumbest movie of the year. It's all coming up on the CNET UK Podcast. Hello, hi, welcome to CNET UK Podcast. I'm Rich Trenholm and I'm joined by Katie Collins.
Hi Rich, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing very well. We've had a little bit of a break, but we filled it with lots of exciting things. But first of all, let's start with some interesting news in the world of fonts. Font news, everybody. This is
Our favourite kind of news.
Our favourite kind of news. Scientists have created a new font that's designed to forget your memory. To boost your memory so you don't forget things. And it's called Sans Forgetica. See what they did there?
That's great. I mean, I imagine this would be great for like university students who are like cramming and I can definitely see why this is a good thing. But how does it actually work?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Katie, because I'm about to tell you. The design of it is that it's a sans serif typeface, and it's actually designed to be harder to read than most fonts. Most fonts are designed to be easy to read so you can glide over them and you can read quickly and easily. This is designed to be harder to read because it slants left.
Okay.
Right? So it leans the other way to most fonts. It's fairly rare to be for that to be used in typography, and it's full of holes. There's like bits cut out of the different letters, and so with it slanting left and with all these holes, it's harder to read. So you have to concentrate more.
Right. Yeah, I can definitely see how that would work. So it's asking your brain to kind of go into overdrive a little bit to read through, and therefore it's less likely just to slip out of your mind the second that you've read it.
Exactly, which is something I think we're all familiar with. It's called deeper cognitive processing, apparently, when you
Right.
kind of ask your brain to work a little bit harder, and that promotes retention of the stuff that you're reading. Interestingly, this psychological learning principle is known as desirable difficulty.
Okay.
Which is also my Tinder name. There you go. Anyway.
So is this something that we're going to be kind of like, is it going to be an option that we're going to be seeing in Word, for example? Or
I don't know. I would hope so. Yeah. I mean, it's been developed by scientists. I think we should use it everywhere. Yeah, I think so. I think everything should be harder to read.
Oh, apparently you can download it as a Chrome browser extension, or to use on PC or Mac. So there you go. If you're perhaps studying, you've got exams coming up or something like that, then that might be something worth looking into. Yeah. Why don't you test it out and let us know how you get on with it?
Absolutely. Those Wikipedia articles won't learn themselves. So, get stuck in. Also coming up, a problem that's been affecting a few people is the iPhone XS has a charging problem. Now, it seems like there's always... I don't understand how there's a problem with new phones in this day and age. I mean, come on, surely they've mastered it. Surely they've kind of figured it out. But apparently charging is a bit too difficult for the iPhone XS. So some users have noticed their phones won't charge if the screen is off when they plug in their lightning cable.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
it's a bit niche.
Yeah, it is niche. Apparently, this is going to be solved with a software update, though. So this,
thank God.
The next software update, iOS 12.1, it's currently in beta, but it's going to arrive on iPhones and iPads later this autumn. So if you do have a new iPhone XS and you're struggling with this, or you've experienced it, then don't worry, a fix is coming. Until then, I think the sort of temporary hack to fix this is just to make sure your screen is on when you plug your lightning cable in. Not ideal, but just something to be aware of for now, I expect.
Yeah, at least it's not as bad as last year when the new iOS system came along and it wouldn't let you use the letter I. Which was a bit of a... I mean, it's not like you use the letter I all that often.
No.
I mean, that's all I ever use. I just talk about myself constantly.
I mean, this... I do find generally that iOS updates are a lot more stable than they used to be. There used to be a sort of... I used to wait a while at least to download the latest version of of Apple software to my phone. Nowadays, it tends to be a lot more stable, so it's not going to kind of like wipe your phone and lose everything that you have and delete all of your photos or anything like that. So they are generally a lot more stable, but there are obviously these like little bugs that they find that they'll try and patch up in later versions as well.
Fair enough. Absolutely fair enough. Also, what's happening this week is the Paris Motor Show has been on. So we've sent our roadshow and our intrepid roadshow team out there to look at the latest cars and trucks and motorbikes and other road-going vehicles. Some of the cool things they've seen, we're not going to go too much into it, but I quite like the look of the Peugeot E-Legend concept, which is an electric car, but it looks like a kind of like old muscle car. It's
nice.
quite cool. It looks like a kind of gnarly vintage look. It's kind of cool. There's also a drivable Lego Bugatti Chiron. So it's a Bugatti Chiron made out of Lego, but you can drive it, which may be the coolest thing at the Paris Motor Show. With it being the Paris Motor Show as well, it's obviously it's a European show. It's full of European cars. If you're American, then you might not get to see some of these cars. So we actually have a special gallery which shows you all the cars that aren't coming to America. So I hope you enjoy that one. And if you're European, you can see all the cars that we get to keep for ourselves. So it's something for everyone, really, in that sense. But look out for cnet.com/roadshow. Anyway, and you've been on the road, so to speak. You've been out and about.
Yep. Well, I actually I flew to Ireland and back in the space of a day. So not on the road so much as in the air.
Okay.
But this was a trip that I did last week, I think, or maybe the week before now. But I flew over to Dublin. And I went to visit Facebook's new data centre that they've just opened just outside Dublin in a town that I think you pronounce Cluny or Cluny.
Okay.
Sorry if I'm getting that wrong. I'm sure our Irish fans will tell us, let us know.
Yep, race to the comments.
Yep. But basically I went to see this data centre that is, I mean, usually, I won't lie, data centres can be quite dull.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just... They're just these kind of big warehouses almost that are full of servers, and you know they don't even have many people in them because it doesn't take
just a lot of flashing lights.
Yeah. But this one I found particularly interesting. I mean, partly because it's owned by Facebook. So this is I was kind of wandering down these rows of sort of flashing server stacks, and you know they're all kind of labelled, so you see what. Which bit of Facebook each server stack is relating to. So
like likes and pokes.
And newsfeed and that kind of thing.
Really? I was joking. It's actually... Wow, okay.
So you have all of these... you kind of have all of these different bits of Facebook, and it's Facebook in its most sort of tangible form. And the way that it works is, you know, if you click like on something on Facebook, then it will kind of... Facebook will sort of send all of these signals to all these different data centers. The data centers will kind of scramble all the data together in the right order and deliver it back to you within the space of, you know, milliseconds down the fiber cables. So yeah, it was amazing just to kind of be inside this data center, and they've got all of this. So Facebook's pledged as well to run on totally renewable energy by 2020. I think originally when they signed up to this, they said 2022, but they're actually way ahead of schedule. So they've got all of these. This data center kind of runs totally on renewable energy. It's taking advantage of the fact that Ireland is one of the best countries for wind power in the world, to make sure that it's kind of, you know, using all of that to power it. And it's also got all of these it's got this special cooling system that sucks all of the hot air up from the data centers and kind of sends cool air back down into them, and it's about twice as efficient as normal. It's also really interesting just to kind of, because you don't really get an opportunity to see, you know, these kind of facilities very often, and to see how the kind of Silicon Valley Facebook culture sort of presents itself in this tiny town outside of Dublin in Ireland, because, you know, I've been to some of the Facebook offices in London, and they're kind of like, you know, that as you would imagine, that it's like free lunches and like lots of like murals all over the wall, lots of cool stuff going on, very colourful, like it has a kind of like a fun atmosphere.
Meeting rooms with silly names. And that kind of thing,
so it was interesting to see. There are about 300 people that work on this site, and a lot of them actually I think are employed in security. But they have all of these kind of, the whole of the data center is surrounded by a lot of land, and they've landscaped it so that it reflects the surrounding area, and they've got kind of local like flora and fauna, and as you go in, the first thing that you see are all these beehives. It's not very obvious actually when you arrive that it is a Facebook site.
Okay.
The first kind of branding that you see is as you go in are all these beehives with all of the Facebook letters along them, and they're all painted Facebook blue.
Okay.
And I was talking to some of the people that worked there, and apparently they have 2 beekeepers on staff.
All right.
But since starting to work there, it's kind of become a bit of an extracurricular activity for a lot of the employees, and there are now over 20 people on the staff that help maintain the beehives, and they're all doing beekeeping at home, and
so it's a hive of activity.
It really is. They make all this honey and they serve it in the canteen and that kind of thing. So yeah, it was just really interesting to kind of see inside, what makes Facebook kind of tick over on a day-to-day basis. And
like a physical manifestation of our online lives. What does it sound like? Is it noisy?
So inside the server room, it's kind of like there's a sort of constant hum of all the servers. It's kind of it's quite dark in places, and also I went up on the roof, which was quite cool. Okay. I always like going up on the roof of buildings.
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, it was just easy. It was just interesting just to see the kind of the way in which it sort of stands up, and how Facebook has these sensors all around the world, and how they all of our data is kind of passed up and stored in different places. And every time we kind of use Facebook, we're actually interacting with all of these masses of machines all over the place. So yeah, it was just an interesting insight into it.
And there's an article about that on the site?
There is, yes, and some photos, so you can actually see what it looks like as well. See
what it looks like inside Facebook's brain.
Yeah.
And hearts and liver and spleen.
Yeah.
And beehives.
Yeah.
So that sounds cool. Well, so moving on, we have some more news about what from Facebook, one of the world's biggest corporations, to Disney, another huge corporation.
Yep.
And we have some more news about what they're going to be doing with their new streaming service, which is coming soon in the future.
Exciting.
Yeah, it is. So there's been some new news about one of the shows they're going to be showing on their new video streaming service, and it's a Star Wars show, and it's going to be called The Mandalorian. And this is the show that's going to be produced and created by Jon Favreau, the guy behind Iron Man and Swingers and loads of other stuff, and the Jungle Book remake. So this for Disney. So this is going to be a new show. We don't know too much about it. We haven't seen any pictures yet. But all we know is it's going to be about someone who's in some way related to Boba Fett, the famous bounty hunter from the original movies. The Mandalorian. So Boba Fett was a Mandalorian. He was from the planet Mandalore, I guess. I don't know. He was a Mandalorian bounty hunter, and this show is going to be about a Mandalorian, presumably a bounty hunter. They've been described as a lone gunfighter on the frontier of space, and it's set between the original movies and the start of the new movies. So it's set between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens.
Okay.
So it's kind of a chapter of Star Wars that hasn't quite been explored particularly thoroughly. So yeah, there's quite a few shows coming about Star Wars. There's, we've got all the spin-offs like Solo and that kind of, and Rogue One and that kind of thing. But we're also going to get Star Wars Resistance, which is about Poe Dameron and his mates. Now we've got this show, The Mandalorian. The Clone Wars is coming back. There's a lot of Star Wars.
Do you think it's getting to the point where we're getting a bit oversaturated? Do you think they're kind of milking the universe maybe a bit too much, and we're kind of losing the that kind of like real thread of sort of excitement and the kind of canon almost of Star Wars, and sort of splitting it up a bit too much into different directions?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, this is the thing. So our colleague Claire Riley has written a piece that's just basically talking about that very thing. She talks about how when she was a kid, she probably would have loved to have seen all this stuff. But Star Wars was like a special thing, and every couple of years it came, a new Star Wars movie came along, and it was a big deal. So maybe that's true. I think maybe we were a bit jaded. I was thinking about this the other day when I went to the premiere of the new Doctor Who series, and it occurred to me that 10, 15 years, 15, 20, well, let's be honest, 20, 25 years ago, I would have been like absolutely over the moon to have the amount of Doctor Who stuff that's out there, the books and the spin-off shows that there aren't on the moment, but stuff like Torchwood and the Sarah Jane Adventures and Class and all that kind of thing. When I was a kid, I would have just like lapped that all up. And now as an adult, even though I love Doctor Who and I love watching it still, I never bothered to really get into those shows particularly. And I just, I guess I've just grown up. So I think maybe it's easy for us to say, oh, there's too much Star Wars. But for kids, it's probably, kids who love Star Wars, it's probably a great time to be alive. What a time to be alive and young.
And to be a Star Wars fan.
And to be a Star Wars fan, exactly. I do sometimes feel like there's so much stuff, like the kind of the binge watching box set revolution and the golden age of TV has turned slightly into, for me, it feels like homework. You kind of you meet up with your friends and you're like checking off the list. Like, have you watched Ozark yet? Have you watched Better Call Saul yet? And you're like, oh no, I'm really behind on Ozark, and I haven't even thought about Westworld season 2. It just feels like there's so much stuff that feels like homework.
And actually, I think as a kind of the thing that makes me do is to go back and rewatch a lot of stuff that I find really kind of comforting, and it's kind of it puts me off a little bit. Like it feels like once you start investing in a new series, like oh, this is going to take up a bunch of my time, and I don't know if it's going to be worth it. And I'm really picky about new things that I'm prepared to kind of get into, and it is making me go back and just rewatch a load of old stuff that I've seen before. And perhaps that's perhaps I should step outside my comfort zone a little bit. But I do feel like I watch at least one new thing every month. That's
cool. I think the important thing is probably to try something new without feeling beholden to finish the whole thing. I sometimes get put off actually starting something just because I feel like I don't want to complete it, or I'm never going to complete it.
And also, if something gets to like season 2 or season 3 and you haven't started it already, you just feel like, oh, well, I'm so behind, I'm never going to catch up now.
Yeah, exactly. yeah. I feel a bit like that with Game of Thrones. I know it's terrible. I'm not really that up on Game of Thrones, but I think maybe I might like marathon it before the last season starts.
Yeah.
But there's been some good stuff that's been on for example, on Netflix recently. Maniac, I thought was great, and Final Space is fantastic on Netflix. That is really, really good. It looks kind of like Futurama, and it looks like a kind of wacky, silly sci-fi spoof cartoon, and it sort of is, but it also turns into this kind of proper space opera. It's kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy. It's actually it's funny, but it's actually also really kind of surprisingly affecting and exciting. So Final Space
sounds good.
Yeah, it's good.
Also, I've noticed that Maniac's been kind of advertised to me quite a lot, so I think I might give that a go as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Because the algorithm has suggested
the algorithm decrees that Maniac
that it might be for me.
Yeah,
so
it's up your street.
Although it also said Insatiable might be for me, and it definitely wasn't. So
right. Fair enough.
So just one last question on this. What else do we know about Disney's streaming service and who it's going to kind of be targeted at? Because, I'm already signed up to a bunch of different streaming services, and taking on a new one now at this stage.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. New streaming services are kind of the big thing at the moment that everyone's trying to do. Apple's trying to do it. Disney's doing this. The main thing that we kind of know is that Disney is taking all its stuff. It's kind of taking its ball and going home. It's taking all its toys off Netflix and other places, and it's just going to be available on the Disney streaming service. The exact details of how it's going to work for us over here aren't clear yet. I'm not entirely sure if it's just going to be a US thing.
Okay.
There's also DC have just launched or is about to launch their new streaming service, which is going to have brand new live action shows like Titans, which is where it's about like the sidekicks of the superheroes. So it's like Robin swearing and beating people up. It's quite gritty and violent.
It almost feels like these are a bit more niche though, because they're whereas anyone could probably sign up to Netflix or Amazon Prime and Prime Video and find something on there for them, and there'd be stuff for a whole family. If you're not into Disney or if you're not into DC, then it sounds like these services are not going to be for you.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. DC is definitely something that's going to be fairly niche. I mean, there's a huge number of people who love DC, but it's still going to be pretty much all superheroes. Disney, at least. I mean, the thing about Disney is it has Marvel, it has Star Wars, it has the Disney princess type movies. So that's a fairly broad range of stuff. But it is reaching the point where you're going to have to decide. Like when Apple launches their streaming service, you're going to have to think: can I spend $10 $10 on Amazon, $10 on Netflix, $10 on
YouTube
Disney,
Premium as well.
Premium, exactly, yeah. So Hulu and so on and so on. I mean, there's a bunch of other even more niche ones. There's Shudder, which does horror movies. There's Mubi and BFI Player, which are like cinephile streaming services that do kind of art house and indie and classic movies. So there's all these different streaming services, and I think what we're probably going to see is we've reached the point now where everybody's trying to get in the game, and then in a few years' time it'll shake out and it'll kind of consolidate back down, and we'll probably just end up with Netflix and Amazon like we have now. So good luck while it lasts.
But paying more for them.
Probably, yeah. So good luck. Enjoy, have a good time while it lasts, Apple and everybody. But we'll see how it goes. Apple have got some really big names lined up for their streaming service. We don't know what they're going to be yet. We know, for example, they're going to have a show by Damien Chazelle, who is the guy who directed La La Land, and he's just directed First Man, which comes out next week, which is very, very good. Should we talk about First Man just for a second? That's coming out on the 11th of October, and it is excellent. It stars Ryan Gosling as Neil Armstrong, who you may remember was the first man to walk on the moon, and it also stars Claire Foy from The Crown as his wife, directed by Damien Chazelle, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's really, really good. It's what they've done is something really clever, where they don't kind of show you these kind of like wide epic shots of the spaceships taking off. That you might have got from like Apollo 13 and that kind of thing. What they do is they put you right in the cockpit and the capsule with Neil Armstrong. So a lot of the time, all you're really seeing is like Ryan Gosling's eyes, which is more than enough, obviously, in his helmet, and you're seeing
I'm sold.
Exactly, the dials and the switches and the readouts that he's looking at, and you're seeing these little tiny windows as like the Earth falls away and
sounds quite claustrophobic.
It's incredibly claustrophobic, and it's so immersive. And it sounds counterintuitive that it's a very small kind of intimate sort of view of this guy's experience, but it was so immersive that when I saw it on the IMAX screen, the massive IMAX screen, it really kind of brought me into it. So I think it's what the big screen is made for, I think. And then it also sort of shows the lives at home of the astronauts, which is a little bit of a kind of like standard biopic thing, where you've got a brilliant man being all driven and obsessed, and his wife is like, but what about the kids? And she's like, no, Neil, you listen to me all the time, that kind of thing. There's lots of slamming doors and that kind of stuff, which is a little bit of a thankless task for Claire Foy. But I actually also I did get to meet Ryan Gosling and Claire Foy and had a little bit of a chat to them about the movie. So let's have a little clip of that now.
Like what I wanted to try to do with this movie was try to take a contemporary viewer and try to really rewind in a true time travel kind of way to the early 60s, where walking on the moon was as insane a proposition as today. Maybe it's Mars or what have you, but kind of as insane a proposition as you can get, and felt as unwieldy an enterprise. And just to see step by step in a real time, immediate kind of way, not with an historical vantage point, but hopefully in a present tense kind of way, how one goes about turning improbable fantasies into realities, and again, the costs that we often forget.
Human spaceflight anyway had sort of become, at least where I grew up, taken for granted. It wasn't something that really was being discussed. The Moon Man was the MTV logo, and that's why I think when Damien and I met about this and I read Neil's story, I just was like it was just such an inspired idea on his end to want to sort of dive deeper into that and to revisit it and to show that it wasn't this predestined success.
An incredible thing that Damien did, which is he gave us room to not have to feel pressured or that we had to get it right. And for me, I just personally felt really grateful because I got to test out an American accent for 2 weeks without anyone going, I'm not sure about that vowel sound, which was amazing. And we all got to kind of, live with each other and get to know one another and mess up and do it wrong and try things out, which is very, very rare.
So that's First Man. And the funny thing about First Man is that after it had finished, I felt like I just wanted to just sit quietly. I didn't want to go out into the world of like people and traffic and email and all that kind of stuff. I just wanted to sit in the darkened theatre and just like sit with it and just sort of. It was a really strange feeling. I can't think of any movie where I felt like that for such a long time. So so First Man is absolutely stunning. That's out on the 11th or 12th of October, so that's out fairly soon. But if you want to go to the pictures now, then what you can go and see is what might be from a very smart movie, First Man, to a very dumb movie, which is Venom. And you know what? I actually thought it was really fun. So in a terrible way.
Yeah, but I think that it's been that year, hasn't it? I mean, of us kind of wanting a bit of stupidity and saying it doesn't have to be good in the classical sense for you to really enjoy it.
Yeah. So Venom, for those of you who aren't aware, Venom is a villain from the Spider-Man comic books. And so he's appearing in his own movie. He's this kind of like alien hybrid guy who sort of, he's like this kind of superpowered alien black-clad kind of weirdo who likes biting people's heads off. And he kind of bonds with Tom Hardy, who's this sort of hapless reporter.
Does he have eyes?
He does. He does have eyes. He kind of like, he sort of takes over Tom Hardy's body, and he has like big fang teeth, and he has sort of eyes, and he's this big kind of like huge black creature. And so the thrust of the story is about Tom Hardy is trying not to let this creature take over him, and it's that sort of side of it is really, really fun, because Tom Hardy is like really kind of like, he's very Tom Hardy. He's doing a bit of a funny voice, and he's really like kind of twitchy and sweaty and committed to it, and he's playing this guy who just doesn't know what's happening to him while this monster is trying to take over his body. And so there's almost like a kind of David Cronenberg body horror element to it, and to the action scenes and stuff, and that bit of it is really, really fun. The trouble is, it's all that's sort of pushed aside too often for this sort of fairly generic superhero story where there's like a villain and there's a love interest, and that's all a bit boring. What you really kind of want to see is Tom Hardy just trying to stop himself from eating people, which is which is really fun.
Do you think that's something that Tom Hardy struggles with in real life?
I think it probably is. I think he really kind of brought a lot of himself to this role. What's kind of funny about it is that he's sort of doing. He said he drew influence from Woody Allen and Conor McGregor. So kind of Woody Allen's the sort of like neurotic, kind of twitchy, kind of normal guy, and then Conor McGregor is this like pumped up sort of almost bad guy figure. And what's great is that when Tom Hardy is like fighting for control of his own body, he's kind of like mumbling to himself all the time in this Woody Allen-ish way. He's like, oh, what happened to my leg? My leg was broken. Oh my God, I just hit that guy. I don't want to eat someone. And it's just really funny. Those bits are really fun. And also the Venom being has a bit more of a personality than I expected. And when that comes out, it's quite funny. Like there's a whole sort of subplot about Tom Hardy trying to get his girlfriend back, and Venom, this kind of alien being that likes eating people, starts giving him advice, which is just hilarious.
It's like the devil on his shoulder.
It really is. And I wanted a lot more of that. And unfortunately, Michelle Williams and Riz Ahmed, who are both great, and I'm sure they probably got paid a lot of money. I hope so. They kind of, their stories are quite dull, and they kind of bog this story down. And Riz Ahmed also plays the exact same Silicon Valley tech but genius bad guy that he played in the Jason Bourne movies. So I mean, it wasn't much of a stretch for him. I guess, you know, maybe they thought no one remembers Jason Bourne because it wasn't very good, the most recent one. But there you go.
No,
but Venom, it's kind of fun. It's kind of silly. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't work. It's all over the place. But it's kind of fun. I quite liked it. So there you go. It's a big dumb supervillain movie that reminds you of big dumb supervillain movies from like 10, 15 years ago. Honestly, if you look back fondly on Ghost Rider and Spawn and the Hulk movies that Marvel tries to forget about, then yeah, you'd probably love Venom. Yeah.
Sounds great.
It is great. So yeah, let us know. It is actually out now. So I think it's out now. Yeah, by the time you hear this, it will have been out for a couple of days. So yeah, maybe you'll have seen it, maybe you haven't. I don't know. Tell us what you think of Venom. Let us know. You can get in touch you can email CNET UK Podcast at cbsi.com, or we're on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook, all over the place. We're on Snapchat. Does anyone still use Snapchat?
I think they do.
Okay.
But not to the same extent.
Not to the same extent, okay.
No.
You can Instagram story us or something, I don't know, that's what the kids do these days, isn't it? You can find us, I'm on Twitter at Rich Nightwell, and Katie, what's your
I am
handle?
at Katie Collins. Nice and simple.
Nice and simple, great. And if you want to leave a review for us on iTunes or leave some comments on YouTube, then we'd be very grateful, as long as they're nice, because we are very thin-skinned and we're feeling very delicate.
Yeah.
So yeah, be nice. I think that's it. We'll see you hopefully very soon. Bye now.
Bye.
You didn't wave.
Sorry.